My father had tears running down his face when he stood up at my brother's engagement dinner and called him, and I'm quoting this exactly, the only success this family has ever produced. 40 people lifted their glasses. 40 people cheered. And I sat at a table near the kitchen doors in the one nice dress I owned, watching all of it, wondering if a single person in that banquet room had any idea what I actually did for a living. They didn't. Not one of them. My family had spent 15 years making absolutely sure of that. What happened in the next 90 seconds tore that entire room apart at the seams. But to understand why it mattered so much, you need to go back to the beginning. All the way back. Because this isn't just a story about a dinner. It's a story about what happens when a family builds its whole identity on a lie, and what happens when the lie finally runs out of road. Welcome back to the channel. I'm your narrator for tonight's story, and our protagonist is a woman named Cassidy. Cassidy Reyes, 33 years old, trauma surgeon at one of the busiest Level 1 trauma centers in the Pacific Northwest. Her parents spent $180,000 putting her older brother through medical school. And they told Cassidy, to her face, sitting at the kitchen table, that a woman's place was beside her husband, not in a classroom. If you've ever been the invisible one in your own family, the one whose accomplishments got quietly erased so somebody else could shine brighter, this story is going to feel like it was written about you. Stay with us. Drop a comment when you get to the part that hits closest to home. And if stories like this mean something to you, hit subscribe now, because it's about to get a lot heavier before it gets satisfying. Cassidy grew up in a single-story rancher on the outskirts of a small timber town called Belfield, about 40 minutes south of Salem, Oregon. Cedar siding gone silver with age. A gravel driveway that turned to mud every November. A detached workshop out back where her father kept his tools, because Walt Doyle didn't believe in renting space when he could build his own. Walt ran Doyle and Sons Heating and Cooling, even though there was only one son, and that son had never once climbed into a crawl space to fix a furnace. Walt had built the business himself, starting as a 19-year-old apprentice and working his way up to owning 3 trucks and a small crew. He came home every night smelling like sheet metal and solder, sat in his recliner with a can of Rainier beer, and watched the local news like it was scripture. He was proud of that business. Fiercely proud. Proud that he'd built something with his hands, that he'd never needed a 4-year degree to put food on the table, and that nobody in Belfield could tell him otherwise. Cassidy's mother, Marlene, ran the household with the precision of a woman who had learned, a long time ago, that calm was the only currency that kept the peace. Dinner at 6. Church on Sunday mornings without exception. She ironed Walt's work shirts even though they'd be streaked with grease by 7:30. If you asked Marlene her opinion on something, anything, she'd tilt her head slightly toward Walt and say, "Your father's got a good read on these things." Cassidy's older brother, Tyler, was 2 years ahead of her in school. A solid student. Decent at baseball. Fine, not great, at math. The kind of kid teachers described as a good effort rather than gifted. Nobody ever called Tyler exceptional, but nobody needed to because Tyler was the son, and in the Doyle household, that fact alone did most of the heavy lifting. Cassidy was the one who stayed up past her bedtime with a flashlight under the covers, reading her grandmother's old encyclopedia set 1 volume at a time. She caught crawdads in the irrigation ditch behind the elementary school. She took apart the toaster to see how the heating coils worked and put it back together so well nobody noticed for 2 years. She asked her 5th grade science teacher, Mrs. Okafor, so many questions after class that the woman started bringing in extra books just for her. In 7th grade, Cassidy scored the highest mark in the entire school district on the state science assessment. She brought the certificate home practically vibrating with excitement, certain this was the moment her father would finally look at her the way he looked at Tyler's report cards. Walt glanced at it for maybe 3 seconds. "Good," he said. "Now go help your mother with dinner." That same semester, Tyler brought home a C+ in algebra. Walt taped it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a tiny furnace. Cassidy never forgot that. The disproportion of it. A near-perfect score earning 3 seconds of attention, and a mediocre grade earning a place of honor on the fridge for a month. She didn't understand it yet, not fully, but something in her chest filed the moment away as evidence. evidence of a pattern she'd spend the next 15 years collecting. The summer Cassidy turned 18, she graduated valedictorian of her high school class. A 4.0 GPA she'd maintained without ever pulling an all-nighter, because she didn't need to. 3 acceptance letters sat fanned out on her desk: University of Oregon, Oregon State, and a small liberal arts college in Washington State that had offered her a partial academic scholarship. That same summer, Tyler was accepted into the pre-med track at Oregon State. One Tuesday night in July, Walt called them both to the kitchen table. He had a yellow legal pad in front of him, numbers scrawled in pencil, half erased and rewritten. Marlene sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, the posture of a woman who already knew what was coming and had decided not to fight it. "Here's what we're doing," Walt said. He'd already talked to the credit union. He was refinancing the house and pulling from the retirement account he'd spent 23 years building before he went independent. Every dollar, every single dollar, was going toward Tyler's education. 4 years of undergrad, then 4 years of med school. $180,000 total, give or take. "This family is finally going to have a doctor," Walt said, and he looked at Tyler the way some men look at a brand new pickup truck they've been saving years to afford. Cassidy waited for a pause that didn't come. Then she asked the only question that made sense to her. "What about me? I got into 3 schools." Walt didn't pause. He didn't flinch. He looked at her with an expression she'd spent years trying to decide was cruelty or just a complete absence of imagination. "Cassidy, honey, a woman's place is beside her husband. You don't need a degree. You need a good man who can provide for you." The refrigerator hummed in the silence that followed. Cassidy looked at her mother, hoping, stupidly, she'd later think, for some flicker of objection. Marlene was nodding. Slowly. Automatically. The exact same nod she gave everything Walt said, whether it was about dinner plans or refinancing the house. Tyler stared at his plate. He didn't argue. He didn't say a single word in his sister's defense. Not one. "I had a 4.0, Dad," Cassidy said. "And your mother had a 3.8 in high school," Walt said. "Look at her. She's happy." Marlene's fork hand tightened around the handle for just a second. Then it released. She said nothing at all. Cassidy went upstairs. She didn't slam her door. She'd learned a long time ago that slamming doors got you nothing but a lecture about respect. She sat at her desk and looked at the 3 acceptance letters laid out like a hand of cards she'd just been told she wasn't allowed to play. She stayed up until almost 2 in the morning doing math on the back of a grocery receipt. Tuition at the community college in town came to $2,400 a semester. She had $1,100 saved from 3 years of babysitting. She needed $1,300 more plus rent, plus food, plus textbooks. The next morning, she came downstairs before Walt left for work. He was pouring coffee into his battered steel thermos. "I'll figure it out on my own," she said. He chuckled. Not cruelly, genuinely amused, like she'd just told a decent joke. "With what money, sweetheart? I'll work." He shook his head, screwing the lid onto the thermos. "We can only invest in one future at a time, Cassidy. Tyler's going to be a doctor. That's this family's ticket out." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then I'll invest in my own." He didn't argue. He didn't get angry. He just picked up his thermos, grabbed his keys off the hook by the door, and walked out to the truck. Years later, Cassidy would understand the look on his face in that moment wasn't dismissal. It was a bet. He genuinely believed she'd come crawling back inside of 3 months, asking for help. He'd be waiting a very long time. Within a week, Cassidy had 3 jobs lined up. 5 a.m. at a bakery on Cedar Street, hauling 50-pound flour sacks and rolling out dough before the sun came up, her hands raw and cracked from the cold mixing bowls. 9 to 5 as a receptionist at a dental office near the highway, answering phones and filing insurance claims with anatomy flashcards tucked in her desk drawer for the slow moments. 6 to 11 at night waitressing at a truck stop diner off Highway 22, pouring coffee for long-haul drivers and bussing tables until her feet went numb and her lower back screamed. She wrote her schedule on an index card and taped it inside her closet door. 3 columns, 3 jobs, 3 hourly wages. At the bottom, in block letters, Community college fall semester, $2,400. She moved out of her parents' house that same week. Found a studio apartment for $425 a month, 15 minutes from the community college campus by bus. Walt didn't try to stop her. He figured reality would do that job for him. Her first year at Cascade Community College, Cassidy took 15 credits a semester on the pre-med track while working 55 hours a week across 3 jobs. She learned to study in the cracks of her day. Flashcards tucked into her apron pocket at the diner. A biology textbook propped open behind the front desk phone at the dental office. Organic chemistry notes taped to her dashboard, glanced at during every red light on the drive between jobs. She slept around 4.5 hours a night, sometimes 5 if she skipped breakfast. Her hands smelled like flour in the morning, latex gloves in the afternoon, and fryer grease at night. She kept a 4.0 anyway. Her chemistry professor, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Petrosian, who wore the same gray cardigan every single Monday, stopped her after class one afternoon. "You're the best student I've had in 11 years teaching here," he told her. "Why are you at a community college instead of a 4-year university?"
She told him she was working on that.
She called her mother exactly once that semester. A Sunday evening, picked up on the 3rd ring. "How are you, honey?" Marlene asked. "I'm okay," Cassidy said. "I'm taking organic chemistry this semester." There was a pause. The specific kind of pause where someone is choosing which sentence to say next, sorting through options like cards in a hand. "Your brother got an A in his anatomy class," Marlene said. Cassidy waited for her mother to ask about her own classes. She didn't. She waited for her to ask if she was eating enough, sleeping enough, doing okay out there on her own. She didn't ask any of that either. "That's great for Tyler," Cassidy said. "Tell him I said congratulations." Marlene said she would. Then she said she had to go because dinner was getting cold. Cassidy hung up and sat on the edge of her bed in a studio apartment that smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner, and something in her quietly closed. That was the last time in her life she ever called home first. Halfway through her 2nd year, Cassidy applied to transfer into the pre-med program at University of Oregon. She got in with a partial merit scholarship, $2,800 a year, covering roughly a third of tuition. She'd saved enough from her 3 jobs to cover the rest of the first semester and planned to keep working 2 jobs once she relocated. She packed her studio apartment into the back of her 11-year-old Toyota Corolla and drove 3 hours south to Eugene. New city, new apartment, even smaller this time, on the 3rd floor above a laundromat that ran until midnight. She started classes the following Monday. That Thanksgiving, nobody invited her home. She found out later, scrolling through a cousin's social media post, that the entire extended family had gathered at her parents' house. Turkey, mashed potatoes, the good china that only came out twice a year. Tyler had flown back from Corvallis, where he was finishing his 2nd year of pre-med, sitting at the head of the table between Walt and Marlene. Everyone in the photo was smiling. Her Aunt Diane had commented underneath, "So proud of our future doctor." Cassidy's grandmother, Walt's mother, a sharp-eyed 76-year-old named Opal, sent her a private message instead. "Where were you today?" Cassidy told her she'd been studying. Opal sent back a single heart emoji. She'd just learned how to use them. Cassidy ate Thanksgiving dinner alone that year, standing at her kitchen counter, eating boxed macaroni and cheese straight from the pot because she didn't own enough dishes to bother plating it. Her organic chemistry textbook sat open beside her because she had an exam Monday morning, and the Krebs cycle doesn't pause for holidays just because you're sad. Meanwhile, back in Corvallis, Tyler was starting to struggle in ways nobody at that Thanksgiving table knew about. His first attempt at the MCAT had gone poorly. He retook it months later and barely scraped past the threshold he needed. The family never heard a word about it. Some failures get advertised on refrigerators. Others get locked in a drawer. The following Christmas, Cassidy went home. Not for her parents, but for her grandmother. Opal had asked her directly, point blank, over the phone, and Cassidy couldn't bring herself to say no to the one woman in that family who still remembered her birthday without being reminded. The house was packed that year. Aunts, uncles, cousins, church friends spilling out of the living room into the kitchen. The Christmas tree had new ornaments. Tyler's acceptance photo from Oregon State's pre-med program sat framed on the mantel beside his high school senior portrait. There were no photographs of Cassidy anywhere in that living room. Not one. During dinner, Walt held court the way he always did, telling stories, cracking his one reliable joke about the time a raccoon got into a customer's ductwork. Tyler sat beside him, comfortable and well-fed, his next semester's tuition already wired through. Her Aunt Diane's daughter-in-law, a woman Cassidy barely knew, turned to her with a polite, distracted smile. "So, Cassidy, what have you been up to these days?" Before Cassidy could open her mouth, Walt's voice cut across the table like a closing door. "She's keeping busy, working a few little jobs here and there.
You know how it is.
She'll settle down once she meets the right guy." The table nodded along. Forks returned to plates. Nobody followed up with a single question. Cassidy was 20 years old at that table, carrying a 3.96 GPA in a competitive pre-med program at a 4-year university, and her own father had just introduced her to a room full of relatives as a girl who was simply biding time until marriage. She cut her ham into smaller and smaller pieces and said absolutely nothing. After dinner, she was washing dishes alone in the kitchen when Grandma Opal shuffled in, one hand braced against the counter for balance. She stood beside Cassidy and spoke quietly, almost conspiratorially. "Your grandfather did the same thing to your Aunt Lorraine back in his day," Opal said. "Told her college was a waste on a girl. She proved him wrong eventually." She paused, patting Cassidy's forearm with a hand spotted by age. "You will too." She shuffled back toward the living room without another word. Opal was the only person in that house who knew Cassidy was enrolled in a pre-med program. She never told a single soul. That silence was the agreement between them. Opal's quiet way of letting Cassidy's truth exist somewhere, even if it was only inside one elderly woman's chest. 2 years later, Cassidy graduated from the University of Oregon summa cum laude, top 1% of her pre-med cohort. Final GPA, 3.97. She'd also co-published a research paper with her mentor, Dr. Vivian Castellano, a biochemistry professor who'd noticed her in a 200-person lecture hall during her sophomore year and decided, on instinct alone, that this particular student was worth investing extra time in. Dr. Castellano became the first person in Cassidy's academic life who treated her ambition like it actually belonged to her, rather than something to be managed or minimized. Dr. Castellano wrote Cassidy's medical school recommendation letter. She told her years later it was the proudest letter she'd written in over 500 attempts across her teaching career. Cassidy applied to Oregon Health and Science University's School of Medicine, the same institution, coincidentally, where Tyler had been accepted into the post-botch program after his rocky MCAT scores forced him to retake prerequisites.
She got in.
Full academic scholarship, merit-based, no family contribution required. The acceptance packet arrived in a thick cream envelope, the university's green crest embossed in the corner. She stood in the small square of morning light by her kitchen window and read it twice through, slowly, like she didn't trust her own eyes the first time. She almost called her mother. She actually picked up her phone, scrolled to the contact, hovered her thumb over the call button. Then she set the phone face down on the counter. Her mother would find out when she was finally ready to ask a real question. Graduation day arrived in early June, clear sky, packed outdoor amphitheater, nearly 2,000 people in folding chairs and on blankets across the lawn. Cassidy walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, accepted her diploma in its navy folder. The announcer read her name and her honors aloud over the speakers. In the crowd, there was no one from her family. No Walt. No Marlene. No Tyler. But Dr. Castellano was there. She'd driven over an hour from Eugene, found a seat in the middle section, and when the dean called Cassidy's name, she stood up and clapped with both hands raised high above her head. Not polite applause, but real, unrestrained, joyful noise. Cassidy spotted her from the stage and gave a small nod. It was enough. It had to be enough because it was all she had. Afterward, she walked to her car alone, holding her diploma case against her chest like it might float away if she let go. She sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine, then drove straight to her first day of medical school orientation the following week because grief and momentum, she'd learned, could occupy the same body at the same time. Her father had spent $180,000 to manufacture a doctor out of his son. Cassidy's scholarship letter came with a single sentence typed at the bottom: full tuition awarded on the basis of academic merit. She didn't frame it. She folded it into her wallet and carried it every single day, not as a trophy to wave at anyone, but as quiet, private proof that the investment her father had refused to make in her, someone else had made willingly, based on nothing but the strength of her own transcript. If this story is starting to feel uncomfortably familiar, go ahead and tap that subscribe button now, because from here forward, things get a great deal heavier before they get better. Medical school at OHSU was difficult in a completely different way than the years before it. Not financially difficult. The scholarship covered tuition, and Cassidy took out modest loans to cover rent and groceries. This was the kind of hard that tests whether you can hold a retractor steady for 4 straight hours without your forearm trembling, whether you can memorize every branch of the brachial plexus and recall it flawlessly at 2 in the morning during a timed practical exam, whether you can walk into a cadaver lab on your very first day and not flinch when the sheet comes off. She didn't flinch. She was 26, 4 years older than most of her cohort, who'd come straight out of undergrad funded by parents or trust funds, or some combination of the two. Cassidy was the one who still found flour dust ground into the seams of her old backpack, a relic from the bakery years that never quite washed out. She chose the surgical track early, against the advice of classmates who said it was the hardest road in the building. Her anatomy professor told her, flatly, that she had the steadiest hands he'd seen in over a decade of teaching. She didn't know what to do with a compliment like that, so she just kept cutting, kept practicing, kept showing up before everyone else, and leaving after. In her second year, she walked past the department's hallway of distinguished alumni photographs. Out of curiosity more than anything, she looked for Tyler's name among the honor boards, the research award plaques, the clinical excellence lists.
He wasn't on any of them.
He'd graduated from his post-botch program. He'd gotten into a different, less competitive medical school out of state on his second application cycle. But he hadn't left a mark on a single wall in any building that mattered. Cassidy didn't feel satisfaction noticing that. What she felt was something closer to quiet confirmation. The $180,000 had purchased her brother a degree. It had not purchased him distinction. Those were two very different things, and apparently you couldn't buy the second one no matter how much you spent on the first. Meanwhile, Cassidy was starting to leave marks of her own. Her surgical rotation evaluations came back with the word exceptional written independently by 3 separate attending physicians who had no idea the others had used the same word. She didn't tape a single one of those evaluations to any wall. She just kept going the way she always had. Tyler had graduated from medical school 3 years before Cassidy did, having needed the extra post-botch year to shore up his application. He'd barely scraped through his licensing boards on the first attempt, retaking a portion of the exam and passing the second time with a score that quietly closed every competitive residency door in the country. Surgery, dermatology, orthopedics, all functionally out of reach. He matched into a family medicine residency at a small community hospital 2 hours from Belfield. 3 years after that, he was a general practitioner working out of a strip mall clinic in a town called Hartsdale, 20 minutes from his parents' house. He saw patients for sinus infections, blood pressure refills, school physicals, the occasional sprained ankle. It was honest, useful work, genuinely respectable. But it was not, by any reasonable measure, what $180,000 was supposed to purchase. Walt never acknowledged any version of that gap. To him, Tyler was simply my son, the doctor. He said it at church. He said it at the Elks Lodge on poker nights. He said it to the cashier at the hardware store who hadn't asked and clearly didn't care. Tyler's medical school graduation photo sat above the living room fireplace in a gold frame, occupying the exact spot where Cassidy's 7th grade science certificate should have hung 2 decades earlier, if anyone in that house had ever cared to put it there. When a neighbor named Gus once asked Walt what kind of doctor Tyler was, Walt said, without hesitation, he does surgeries. Tyler did checkups. Cassidy was the one doing surgeries. But Walt wouldn't have known that, because Walt had stopped asking about Cassidy's life a long time before that conversation ever happened. The last photograph of Cassidy that ever hung in that house was her high school graduation portrait. After a particular phone call, the one we're about to get to, Walt took it down. Put it in a drawer somewhere, maybe the garage, maybe the hall closet. Marlene might have known exactly where.
She never said.
The mantle belonged to Tyler now, and the rest of the walls belonged to whatever version of the family story Walt had decided to tell the world. That phone call happened during Cassidy's second year of medical school. She was 28, sitting in her small apartment in Portland, reviewing surgical anatomy slides on her laptop late on a Thursday night, when Walt's name lit up her phone screen. He hadn't called her in over a year. She answered.
His voice was flat, businesslike.
No, hello. No, how are you? Tyler needed money, residency application fees, interview travel, a relocation deposit for the apartment near his eventual program. It had all added up fast. Family supports family, Walt said. We can only invest in one future at a time, and right now he needs a hand. There it was again. The exact same sentence from that kitchen table a decade earlier, just wearing a slightly different coat. You already invested in his future, Dad, Cassidy said. Not mine. So maybe invest in his current problem too. He sighed, the long-suffering sigh of a man being deeply unreasonable and somehow framing it as patience. Don't be selfish, Cassidy. You're out there working your little jobs. Tyler needs. I'm in medical school, she said, cutting him off cleanly. On a full scholarship. At the same university you paid for Tyler's post-botch program to attend. The silence on the line lasted long enough that she could hear ice shifting in a glass somewhere on his end.
Don't lie to me, he said.
I'm not lying.
Call the registrar.
Ask literally anyone. She hung up, set the phone face down on her desk and went back to her slides, half expecting a follow-up call from her mother, a text from Tyler, something. What she got instead was silence. Complete, airtight silence for 2 full weeks. Walt never called the university to verify. He never asked a neighbor, a cousin, anyone to check. Because checking meant risking the very real possibility that his daughter had told him the truth. And if that was true, the entire story he built about why she didn't deserve an education in the first place would collapse under its own weight. It was simply easier, less costly to his self-image, to believe she was lying. People protect the story they've told about themselves the same way they protect their houses. They'd rather board up every window than risk looking outside and seeing something that contradicts the narrative. After 2 weeks of silence, a voicemail finally arrived from her mother. Marlene's voice carried that careful, rehearsed quality she used when explaining to church friends why she couldn't host the potluck that year. Cassidy, I don't know what you said to your father, but you've really hurt him. Whatever you're doing out there, I hope it's making you happy because you're tearing this family apart. Cassidy listened to it once, deleted it. A day later, Tyler texted, *thanks for upsetting Dad. Real mature. Then, a few seconds after that, a second message. Also, who told you about my board scores? Cassidy stared at that second text for a long time. Nobody had told her anything about Tyler's board scores. She'd simply looked them up herself on the Medical Licensing Board's public verification database, public record, available to anyone with an internet connection. But the fact that Tyler's very first instinct, faced with his sister having more information than he wanted her to have, was paranoia rather than curiosity told her everything she needed to know. He knew his record was thin. He knew the family's enormous investment hadn't paid the dividends Walt liked to advertise at church, and he was quietly terrified someone might eventually do the math out loud. She didn't respond to any of them. Not the voicemail, not the texts. She set her phone on the nightstand, drove to the hospital for her surgical rotation, and spent the next 8 hours learning to tie one-handed sutures under pressure. She ate lunch alone in the cafeteria, studied alone in the library that night, went home to an apartment that was clean, functional, and quiet, a single photograph stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet, her and Grandma Opal at Christmas, the last one they'd spent together in person. Opal was the only family member who still called her regularly. Every few weeks, like clockwork. They're angry, she'd say, but I'm proud of you. Finish what you started, sweetheart. Opal was 81 by then, arthritis settling into both hands so badly she could barely grip the phone. She held it anyway, every time, for as long as the conversation lasted. Cassidy graduated from medical school on a Saturday in late May. Bright sun, packed auditorium. The kind of ceremony where families bring bouquets and balloons and somebody's grandmother cries happy tears in the third row. Her family wasn't there. No flowers. No balloons. No grandmother in the third row, though Opal had genuinely wanted to come. Her niece refused to drive her the 4 hours, citing Opal's health, though Cassidy privately suspected it had more to do with which side of the family the niece preferred to stay loyal to. Opal sent a card instead. Inside, in shaky, determined handwriting, Dr. Cassidy Reyes. Dr. Castellano came, of course. She drove over from Eugene, wore a navy blazer with her reading glasses on a beaded chain, and found a seat in the middle section with a clear line of sight to the stage. When the dean called out, "Cassidy Marie Reyes, Doctor of Medicine with distinction," she stood up, not polite clapping, real clapping, both hands raised high above her head. A handful of Cassidy's classmates stood too. They knew fragments of her story, the 3 jobs, the community college start, the scholarship, and they'd filled in the remaining gaps with their own imaginations, which were probably kinder than the actual truth. After the ceremony, Dr. Castellano found her in the crowded lobby, held her by both shoulders and said, "Now go save some lives. And call me the day you scrub in for your first solo surgery." Cassidy promised she would. She drove home that evening and opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving for the occasion, an $18 Pinot Noir from the grocery store down the street, nothing fancy. She poured a single glass, sat at her kitchen table, and drank it slowly while the sun dropped behind the building across the street. The apartment was completely silent. No one called. No one texted. She finished the glass, rinsed it, set it upside down on the drying rack, and went to bed early. Surgical residency started in 3 weeks. She needed the sleep more than she needed anything else. She matched into the surgical residency program at a major teaching hospital in Portland. 5 years, 80-hour work weeks, the kind of schedule that turns your circadian rhythm into a polite suggestion and your social life into a rumor people used to believe about you. She specialized in trauma surgery, the department that takes the calls nobody else wants at 3 in the morning. Car accidents, stabbings, falls from scaffolding, the full, brutal catalog of ways a human body can come apart. Her attending told her during her first year that she had exactly the right temperament for it. "You don't panic," the woman said. "That's half the job." Cassidy didn't mention that she'd learned not to panic a long time ago at a kitchen table in Belfield, Oregon, in a house where showing emotion had always meant losing. By her 3rd year, she had a reputation. Calm hands, clean decisions, efficient under pressure in a way that made senior surgeons trust her with cases above her pay grade. The nurses on the trauma floor started calling her the quiet one because she barely spoke a word in the break room but gave crisp, steady orders the instant a gurney came crashing through the double doors. One night in February, black ice on every road in the county, temperatures in the low 20s, a young woman arrived by medevac helicopter. 28 years old. Her sedan had been broadsided by a pickup truck that ran a red light on Highway 22. She had a ruptured spleen, a lacerated liver, 4 fractured ribs, and a collapsed lung. She was unconscious on arrival. Cassidy scrubbed in at 9:14 p.m. and didn't step out of that operating room until 3:20 in the morning. 6 straight hours. She stayed until the patient's vitals stabilized, then went to the on-call room and slept for exactly 40 minutes before her pager went off again. The patient's name was Sadie Lindqvist, a 3rd-grade teacher from a town not far from Belfield. She spent 2 weeks in the ICU and 3 months in recovery. By the time she was discharged, Cassidy was already 3 cases into the next week and had no particular memory of the name attached to that long February night. She didn't know Sadie's story. Sadie, for her part, didn't know Cassidy's. But Sadie had asked the nurses, before she was even fully lucid, who had saved her life. They told her, Dr. Reyes. Near the end of her 5th and final year of residency, Cassidy needed her original birth certificate for credentialing paperwork. She'd been offered an attending surgeon position at a hospital across the river, and the hospital's HR department was strict about original documents. The original certificate was at her parents' house, tucked away in some box she hadn't seen in over a decade. She drove out to Belfield on a Sunday morning, timing it deliberately so Walt and Marlene would be at the 10:30 service at Belfield Lutheran. She still had her old house key. Nobody had ever asked for it back, and she'd never offered to return it. The house was quiet when she let herself in. Same carpet, same wallpaper in the hallway, same smell, coffee grounds and lemon furniture polish, a smell that hit her like a physical object the moment the door opened. She climbed the pull-down ladder into the attic, the same one that had creaked under her weight as a kid sneaking up to read by flashlight. The attic was hot and dim, packed with cardboard boxes labeled in her mother's careful handwriting. She found the box marked important papers and opened it. Her birth certificate sat right on top, exactly where she expected it. But underneath it, tucked inside a yellowed envelope gone soft with age, she found something she hadn't been looking for at all. An acceptance letter. Cascade Community College's nursing program, dated September, nearly 35 years earlier. Addressed to Marlene Jean Whitfield, her mother's maiden name. Beneath the letter, a tuition receipt for the first semester. $450, marked paid in fading blue ink. And beneath that, a single sheet of lined notebook paper, handwritten, the ink gone brown with age. Your brother needs the money more. You'll be married soon enough. Don't make this difficult. The handwriting slanted hard to the right, heavy pressed, confident. For one disorienting second, Cassidy thought it was Walt's handwriting. It wasn't. It belonged to her mother's father, a man Cassidy had met exactly twice in her life, both times at funerals, but the penmanship carried a similar weight, a similar certainty, the kind of handwriting that had never once doubted its own authority. She stood in that attic heat, dust drifting lazily through the narrow beam of light from the small gable window, and let the full shape of it settle into her chest. Her mother had been accepted into nursing school at 19 years old. Her parents had pulled the funding to send her brother, Cassidy's uncle, to a trade program instead. Marlene never went back. 30-some years later, she sat at her own kitchen table and nodded along while her husband did the exact same thing to her daughter. Cassidy put the letter back in its envelope, put the envelope back in the box, tucked precisely where she'd found it, between a set of Christmas ornaments and a folder of Tyler's old school papers. She folded the attic ladder back into the ceiling, took her birth certificate, locked the front door behind her, and drove away. On the highway back toward Portland, she thought about her mother at 19, Marlene Whitfield, accepted into nursing school for $150 already paid, ready to start a life that had nothing to do with anyone else's plans for her, until her own father decided her brother's future was worth more than hers. Marlene married Walt Doyle 2 years after that. She never went back to school. She raised 2 kids, kept a spotless house, and spent 4 decades quietly defending the exact system that had crushed her own ambition at 19, because admitting that system was wrong would mean admitting she'd lost most of her adult life to a decision that was never actually hers. Cassidy understood her then. Not forgave, understood. When Marlene had nodded along with Walt's speech about a woman's place all those years ago, she hadn't simply been taking her husband's side out of loyalty. She'd been protecting her own survival. If Cassidy's dreams were valid, if a daughter really could do the things Marlene had been told she couldn't, then everything Marlene had spent decades telling herself about her own life, that it was enough, that it had been the right choice, that she was happy, would collapse in on itself. She couldn't afford that collapse. So she enforced the same pattern on her daughter that had been enforced on her, not out of cruelty, exactly, but out of pure self-preservation. Cassidy stopped at a gas station outside Salem, bought a coffee, stood in the parking lot looking out at a hayfield turning gold in the late afternoon light. Somewhere back in that house, her mother had once dreamed of wearing scrubs, taking pulses, telling frightened patients they were going to be okay. Now she folded towels and defended the man who'd told her, decades ago, that she didn't need any of that. Cassidy drove the rest of the way back to Portland and never spoke of what she'd found.
Not to anyone.
Not for a long time.
2 years passed.
Cassidy finished her residency, accepted the attending surgeon position, and moved into a one-bedroom apartment 6 minutes from the hospital. Cascadia Regional Medical Center, Division of Trauma Surgery. Her name went up on the department directory, the hospital website, and a small placard outside her office door. Dr. Cassidy Reyes. She was 32 years old. She operated 4 days a week, ran the Tuesday morning case review conference, and mentored 2 surgical residents who reminded her sharply of her younger self. Quiet, sharp, nobody's first choice in the room until they outperformed everybody else's first choice. She had exactly 2 people in her life she'd called genuine friends. Dr. Castellano, who she still met for dinner every few months without fail, and Renee, a surgical nurse at Cascadia who'd worked beside her long enough to predict which instrument Cassidy needed before she finished asking for it. Renee was blunt, sharp-tongued, funny in a way that cut straight through hospital exhaustion, and the only person reliably capable of making Cassidy laugh in the scrub room at 6 in the morning. Her apartment looked like a surgeon actually lived there. Functional, sparse, more medical journals stacked on the coffee table than actual furniture. She cooked simple meals, ran 4 miles 3 mornings a week along the river, went to bed by 10 most nights. She didn't date much, not out of any particular aversion to it, but because she genuinely didn't have the bandwidth for a relationship that would require explaining her entire life story before the second date. Her story was heavy, and most first dates couldn't carry that weight past the appetizer course. 6 months before her brother's engagement dinner, Grandma Opal died. 87 years old, congestive heart failure, peaceful in her sleep according to the hospice nurse. Cassidy drove down to Belfield for the funeral. Walt shook her hand like she was a distant colleague from the Elks Lodge. Tyler nodded at her once from across the funeral home and didn't cross the room. Marlene hugged her quickly, stiffly, then let go almost immediately, like the embrace itself was a risk she hadn't fully decided to take. Nobody asked what Cassidy did for a living. Nobody asked her anything at all the entire afternoon. She stood at Opal's casket near the end of the service and thought, with a clarity that almost startled her, "I've been grieving this family longer than I've been grieving you, Grandma." And she had the strange, certain feeling that Opal, wherever she was now, would have understood exactly what she meant by that, and wouldn't have judged her for it even a little. By this point, Tyler was 35. His clinic in Hartsdale had a waiting room with mismatched plastic chairs and a wall-mounted TV permanently tuned to daytime talk shows. He saw patients Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, routine checkups, blood draws, the occasional referral out to a specialist when something fell outside his scope, which happened, according to patient review sites, somewhat more often than you'd expect from an experienced family practitioner. He wasn't bad at his job exactly. He was fine, adequate. The kind of doctor you saw when you needed a signature on a work absence form and didn't particularly care who provided it. Walt still introduced him as my son, the doctor, with the unwavering conviction of a man selling the very last used truck on a dealership lot. At church, at the hardware store, at the barbershop, to a barber who clearly hadn't asked and didn't especially want to know. Did I mention Tyler just handled a really tough case this week? Walt would say to anyone within earshot. Tyler had handled flu season. Cassidy had handled ruptured aortas at 2 in the morning. But Walt wouldn't have known the difference because Walt's photograph of his daughter had been missing from his house for the better part of a decade. Tyler's medical school portrait still commanded the mantle, uncontested. The wall told exactly the story Walt wanted it to tell. One child, one success, one investment that had paid off in full. The other child simply didn't exist in that version of the family. Tyler had met Sadie Lindqvist at a church social roughly 10 months before the engagement dinner. She was a 3rd-grade teacher who transferred to a school near Hartsdale not long after, though Tyler had no idea of the specifics, recovering from a serious car accident that had very nearly killed her 2 years earlier. They fell for each other quickly. Sadie was warm, open, the kind of person who remembered your coffee order after a single conversation and asked genuine follow-up questions about your week. Tyler described his family to her in broad, comfortable strokes. His dad was a hardworking small business owner. His mom was devoted and old-fashioned in a sweet way. He mentioned a sister exactly once, early on in passing.
We're not close, he said. She does odd jobs out of state somewhere.
Kind of went off and did her own thing a long time ago. Sadie didn't press the issue. She figured every family had some complicated corner they didn't love discussing, and she had no particular reason to suspect this corner was anything more than ordinary sibling distance. She had absolutely no idea, in that moment, exactly how specifically complicated it actually was, or that the woman behind that vague description had once held Sadie's own ruptured spleen in 2 gloved hands for 6 straight hours. Cassidy's father had remortgaged his house and drained his retirement account to manufacture a doctor out of his son. That son now performed physicals at a strip mall clinic. Cassidy had spent 15 years paying her own way through every level of education, and she now performed trauma surgeries that kept people alive through the worst nights of their lives. But here is the particular cruelty of families like the Doyles. The truth doesn't matter, not really, not in any way that changes anything, until somebody else is the one who finally says it out loud. And somebody was about to. Stay with us. This is where it turns. The banquet room at Hawthorne Lodge glowed with warm light and easy laughter. 40 guests filled the room. Church friends, relatives, neighbors, former teachers, people who had spent years hearing the same story told over and over again. The story of Tyler Doyle, the son, the doctor, the pride of the family. Cassidy arrived quietly and took a seat near the back of the room. Nobody asked many questions. Nobody ever did. Most guests assumed she was some distant cousin, a family friend, someone who happened to be there, exactly the way her father preferred it. Tyler stood near the center of the room with Sadie beside him.
Happy, relaxed, confident. The future stretched out before them like a smooth road. Then Walt stood. He tapped a spoon against his glass. The room fell silent. Everyone smiled. They expected a toast. Walt cleared his throat. Tears gathered in his eyes. "My son," he said proudly, "is the only success this family has ever produced." Laughter. Applause. Glasses lifted. 40 people celebrated. And Cassidy felt absolutely nothing. No anger. No sadness. No disappointment. Just a strange sense of distance, as if she were watching somebody else's life. Then Walt continued. "For 15 years, I've told everyone the same thing. Tyler became the doctor this family always dreamed of." More applause. Sadie smiled politely. Then she glanced toward Cassidy. Only for a second. Just long enough. Something about the name Tyler had spoken earlier that evening suddenly surfaced in her memory. A name. A surname. Reyes. Her smile faded. Slowly. Almost imperceptibly. She looked again. At Cassidy. Then at Tyler. Then back at Cassidy. The gears inside her mind started turning. Fast. Very fast. Finally, she stood. The movement caught everyone's attention. Walt stopped talking. Tyler looked confused. "Sadie?" he asked. She ignored him. Her eyes remained locked on Cassidy. "You said your sister's name was Cassidy Reyes?" The room grew quiet. Tyler laughed nervously. "Yeah. Why?" Sadie's face had gone pale. "Dr. Cassidy Reyes?" Nobody answered. Tyler blinked. I guess." The room became so quiet that people could hear the air conditioner running. Sadie slowly turned toward the guests, then toward Walt, then back toward Cassidy. And when she spoke again, her voice trembled. 2 years ago, I was in a car accident. Nobody understood where this was going. Not yet. I was told I should have died. A few guests exchanged confused looks. I lost nearly half my blood. Now Cassidy knew exactly where this was heading. She lowered her eyes. Sadie pointed directly at her. "That woman saved my life." Silence. Absolute silence. The kind that physically changes the air inside a room. Walt frowned. "What are you talking about?" Sadie's eyes filled with tears. Dr. Cassidy Reyes performed the surgery. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed. I spent weeks asking nurses who saved me. Her voice cracked. They told me her name. She looked at Cassidy. I never forgot it. Tyler's face drained of color. Walt stared as though someone had begun speaking another language.
Then Sadie asked the question nobody in the room could answer. If she's a trauma surgeon, she looked at Tyler. Why have I spent 10 months hearing that you were the only doctor in this family? The room exploded into whispers. Guests turned toward each other. Questions spread through the room like wildfire. A surgeon? Did she say surgeon? Wait, she's a doctor too? Trauma surgery? Level 1 trauma center? Walt opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out, because for the first time in his life, there was no version of the story that worked anymore. The truth was standing right there, in a navy dress, near the kitchen doors, exactly where he'd left her. And suddenly everyone could see it. Nobody returned to their meals. Nobody touched their drinks. The entire room had shifted. The spotlight Tyler had stood beneath his entire life was moving, slowly, inevitably, toward Cassidy. An older man from church spoke first. You're a trauma surgeon? Cassidy nodded. Another voice followed. Like actual surgeries? A few people laughed awkwardly. Cassidy gave a small smile. Yes. A woman near the front asked quietly, what hospital? Cascadia Regional. Several guests recognized the name immediately. The whispers grew louder. Walt looked trapped. Every answer Cassidy gave made the lie harder to maintain. Finally, Tyler stood, his face red, embarrassed, angry, not at Cassidy, at the situation, at the truth, at years of reality crashing into him all at once. You could have told people. Cassidy looked at him calmly. The statement almost made her laugh. I tried. Tyler looked away, because they both knew she was right. Then something happened nobody expected. Marlene stood. For years, she had been silent. For decades, she had survived by staying silent. But something inside her finally broke. Maybe it was Opal's death. Maybe it was the nursing school letter hidden in the attic. Maybe it was seeing her daughter standing alone while 40 people learned the truth from a stranger. Whatever it was, the silence ended. No. The word came out barely above a whisper. Yet everyone heard it. Marlene looked directly at her husband. No, Walt. The room froze. She had never challenged him publicly. Not once. Not in 40 years. Tears filled her eyes. We did this. Walt stared. Marlene. No. Her voice strengthened. We did this to her. Cassidy felt her chest tighten. Marlene turned toward the room. Toward the relatives. Toward the church friends. Toward everyone. Our daughter paid for every class herself. People listened. Our daughter worked 3 jobs. More silence. Our daughter earned scholarships. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Our daughter became a doctor without a single dollar from us. A few guests lowered their eyes because they remembered. They remembered all those years, all those dinners, all those conversations, all those times Cassidy had been ignored. Then Marlene said the one thing Cassidy never expected to hear. We were wrong. Not you. Not he. We. The word mattered, because for the first time, her mother wasn't hiding anymore. Across the room, Tyler slowly sat down, defeated. Not because Cassidy had beaten him, but because he finally understood she had never been competing with him. She had simply been surviving. All these years, without help, without support, without recognition. The engagement dinner ended early. People left quietly. Many stopped to speak with Cassidy before they left. Some apologized. Others congratulated her. A few simply shook her hand. Walt never moved. He remained seated long after the room emptied. The surgeon, they erased. Video title options. My family spent $180,000 making my brother a doctor. They had no idea what I actually became. They told everyone my brother was the family's only doctor. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Thumbnail text options. The daughter they hid. She was the real doctor. Like a man watching the collapse of a building he had spent decades constructing. Finally, Cassidy picked up her purse and headed for the door. Cassidy. Her father's voice stopped her. She turned. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Walt asked the question he should have asked 20 years earlier. What do you do? Cassidy looked at him. Really looked at him. The aging face. The tired eyes. the stubborn pride that had cost him more than he ever realized. Then she answered, "I save lives, Dad. Nothing more, nothing less." The words landed harder than any accusation ever could. Cassidy walked out into the cool evening air. Behind her stood a family forever changed. Ahead of her waited the life she had built herself. No inheritance, no investment, no special treatment, just determination. And the truth that had survived every attempt to bury it. Because lies can last for years, sometimes even decades, but eventually they run out of road. And when they do, the truth doesn't need to shout. It simply stands up and lets itself be seen.